Good evening, MP for St. Michael's South Central, President and Executive of the South Central Branch, ladies and gentlemen. I think I might need a bit of water. It's been a long time, so you know the voice is not quite here. I'm very happy to be here this evening. I know it's been a very long time since some of you might have seen me, and certainly since a lot of people would have heard me. And I thought it perhaps useful to let people see that I'm still around, even though not in the capacity that it was a couple years ago, a year and a half ago or so. I just wanted to let you know to start with that my absence really has been a result of wanting to get a few months rest, because that was absolutely necessary, and also having decided that I was going to document the experience of COVID, because it was so significant and so important for Barbados going forward in terms of what else may come our way, that I felt it necessary to write a book. And that book is entitled The Pandemic Experience of a Small Island Developing State, No Retreat, No Surrender. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do that was to leave something for those who will follow, that at least they will have a foundation, a platform, an idea as to how we dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic, so that they don't have to start from scratch, and so that not only those persons but the average Barbadian would be able to see and hopefully understand why we had to take some of the decisions that we took, and what we consider to have been quite successful, and the areas where we needed to have improved, and hopefully others will do that in time to come. So that took up a lot of my time, apart from the fact that I needed to get a lot of rest. I also have been absent because back in 2013, when I was elected as MP for the city of Bridgetown for the first time, my predecessor, Dame Billy Miller, withdrew herself from things in the city of Bridgetown in order for me to cement myself and establish myself. And I thought it was a very commendable thing that she did. I thought it was the right thing to do. And for me, having benefited from that experience, I felt that it was necessary for me to do so for my successor, so that he could establish himself. So that's another reason why I have not been too much in the limelight. And lastly, I wanted to get away from those things which I would have indicated before were consuming a lot of my time and taking me away from other things that were also very important, and probably more important for me in terms of my own personal life and family and so on. So that is the reason. And you haven't been hearing me because there's no need to hear me, quite frankly, because I am not here anymore to comment on political issues or to discuss government policy, because there are people who are more competent, who are in the positions to do so. And I believe if you're retired from politics in the way that I said I have retired, then you should do what I have been doing and just keep a low profile. However, there are still some things that I believe are important, at least they're still very important to me, of a non-political nature, which I wanted to share with you here today. And I decided to do so because I think these things are of national significance national importance, and that these things, to my mind, are at the center of any response that we as a country would want to mount in terms of trying to get our communities back on track. And these things are strong for me because of my own experience and my own upbringing, where I came from, how I got where I got. And I really felt strongly that I should not let these things go without people having an idea as to what that experience was like. And hopefully that we would be able to utilize not only my experience, because I'm seeing some people in this audience already who I know would have experienced the same things that I did experience. So what am I talking about? You would recall, those of you who are old enough, probably those of you who are older than the MP, that certainly growing up in Chapman Lane as a boy, we didn't have a lot of things. So why is it that although you came up in a household that was not economically strong or wealthy, you were living in a house that you could not afford the paint to give it a paint job, but the house was clean? It wasn't pretty, but it was clean. Even though there was no paint, you didn't allow that to stop you from getting some brushes and some water and some soap and scrubbing down the house. The elderly people here would know exactly what I'm talking about. Why did we still have homes and neighborhoods that were clean, even though we did not have the wherewithal to live a really good and comfortable life? Why is it that we did not have all of the expensive clothing and the brand names and so on, and in many cases not even new clothing, because we survived with hand-me-downs coming from your older siblings? That's familiar to you? Yes, I'm sure it is. I recall that we had damage. You know, the damage is a brand name. We had damage before damage, you know. Huh? We were wearing clothes that were, we call them darn, patched up. All of these things. But in spite of that, the clothes were always clean. Our parents made sure of that. So I started there to say to you that those things happened at that time because we came up in households where discipline existed. We came up in communities and as individuals where self-esteem was high. So that your self-esteem and the self-esteem of your parents, your grandparents, and your siblings did not allow you, for example, to leave an area where there was a drainage system blocked, full of grass and bush and all kinds of things, when you knew that that was very important for the easy flowing of water throughout the community. And for that reason, in those days, we did not have to wait on sanitation or anybody to come and sweep down the gutters. That was a daily routine in each gap within the community that I grew up in. Self-esteem was important. Discipline was important. We didn't all come from households where we had mother and father, but there were support systems that existed at that time. Support systems called church and other religious institutions, which we had to go to. Now, interestingly enough, not everyone continued with church after a certain age. But I can tell you, I strongly believe that those persons who would have been exposed to some sort of religious education, whether it be through a church, a mosque, or a synagogue, It didn't matter. The point I'm making is that at the end of the day, there was a moral compass within you that even sometimes when we deviated from the path, generally speaking, we followed a straight and narrow path and we knew right from wrong. Then there were organizations that helped us, that certainly helped me, like the cadets and the Girl Guides and the scouts and all of those things, where discipline was important, where togetherness was important. And those things also helped to develop our character, develop our personality, and turn us into the young men and women that most of us ended up being as a result of those organizations. Nowadays, young people are not joining those organizations. And I say that to say that these are part of the reasons why we have been having some significant challenges when it comes to communities. And we tend to say young people, because I know when we look at social media, we see a lot of things that are disturbing. But I want to say to you, it is not young people, it's a societal problem, adults included. Because if we allow certain things to happen in our homes, that should not happen in terms, for example, the wrong kind of music or music with lyrics that obviously should not be made available to young, innocent children. If we do not put an end to that, when they go outside and they listen and they hear these things, they will think that this is something good, this is the norm because we are hearing it at home. So we all have a responsibility as adults to determine what we allow our household, our children, our guardians to be exposed to within the household, within the community as well. And this does not mean that when they leave and they go on the outside, that they will not be exposed to those things, but at least they will have that foundation within them knowing that this is something that it does not happen or is outlawed in my household. And this is certainly how I came up. And I really believe, and that is why I wanted to speak to this this evening, because I really believe that this is something that we need to get back to as a country. There are things that are slipping and have slipped. And we've shown out all of the things that have resulted in Barbados being where it is today. And where we as individuals are today, we have thrown those things through the window. And I'm not saying for one moment that we can relive those days exactly as we did back then, because time goes on. Time goes on. I accept that. But at the end of the day, those core things, those core values that made us as a nation, even before independence, when we didn't have all of the institutions that we have now, we didn't have all of the things available to us to enrich the lives of persons, but we still enjoyed a decent life because of the kind of things that we had available to help our communities to develop and to prosper. So, coming out of that, I'm saying to you that in my view, we have lost our self-esteem as a country, and I feel that that is something that we should face up to and something that we should try and must try to correct. And the discipline, if we do not get back to some basic discipline, this horse is going to gallop so far away that it's going to be very, very difficult for anybody or any institution to pull it back. And this is then going to be to the detriment of the country. I also want to, again, from my own experience growing up, to say to you that one of the issues that we had and we continue to have at this point in time is that for many years, several thousands of students left schools over several years without any sort of training or educational qualification. And as a result of going through that experience, they left school feeling very low with no or little self-esteem. And that has been a problem. It has affected the ability of those persons to get jobs. And I think the MP was speaking to quality jobs that will give them a better thing. But I'm not even speaking to quality jobs. I'm talking about jobs, period. Because they just didn't have it and they fell through the cracks because they low self-esteem. They felt that they were nobody, and that continued for a long period of time. I believe, and I'm happy to see that some things are happening in that direction in relation to where we're going with education. But we need to do or create interventions that will raise the level of self-esteem within our people in this country, and especially in the areas where we are having some challenges at this point in time. What do I mean by self-esteem? For example, if you're going to a secondary school that has a strong academic curriculum, and you're doing woodwork, metalwork, maybe agricultural science, even if you excel in those, you don't get the recognition that the others get when they get 6 and 7 and get CXCs. So you too live with a low self-esteem. Now, if you were in a school or an environment where agricultural science was the dominant thing, and you excel in planting and growing, and so if you're somebody big, you're a superstar, you are made to feel you're elevated. And so this is something that we have to look at in the system that we have right now, and trying to transform that system to be able to provide those kind of opportunities that would allow persons to feel good about themselves. And I think that we seem to be going in that direction, and I believe that that will produce some good results in the end. So these things are all connected. So if you are living in a community where the self-esteem is not as good or as high as you would want it to be, and you're going into an institution, academic institution, a secondary school, and you're made to feel the same way, then chances are when you leave that school and you go on the outside, that is going to create real issues for you and for the society in general. And to my mind, we have to see this as perhaps one of the most important things that we tackle as a country. And if we don't, then I know that we all know what the results will be. But that's not all. I have long been saying, and I remember when I first came into politics, I made it one of my primary areas of discussion wherever I went. And it's because I had done a bit of a study and came to the realization that the educational system from secondary to tertiary education was out of sync with the labor market that was providing the jobs. So if we are training people, educating people in areas where there are no jobs, that also will affect self-esteem, and that will have an impact, a negative impact on the societal fabric that we are trying to build. And that is an issue. And it's an issue that we must change. And how do we go about changing something like that? For example, I will mention something that I was familiar with as Minister of Health and Wellness. There is a shortage of nurses globally. We have a shortage of nurses in Barbados. We have an exodus of nurses from Barbados to countries that are offering better returns and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with that. Do we run from it? No. Do we try to stop persons from getting a better life abroad? In my opinion, no. How do we tackle that? Now, that's the labor market demand for more nurses. So we now have to stop training 30 nurses a year, in academic year, and train lots of nurses. Nurses for export, nurses for Barbados. Why? Because there are, as soon as they graduate, there are jobs waiting for them. If there's a construction boom, as we had several years ago, We had a shortage of artisans, technical persons. That's why people came in from overseas. That was a period of time, for example, when the Polytechnic ought to have expanded its technical program and made it easier for more people to be able to be trained. Why? Because the job market required persons with those skills. And that is the disconnect that I'm talking about. That is the disconnect that have people, even with university degrees, that are unemployed or underemployed. And so I'm saying that if we do not connect these dots, these things, if we don't connect them, if we do not quickly find solutions to have these matters resolved, then we will continue to experience the kind of situations that we see manifesting themselves on social media on a daily basis. And my thing is no retreat, no surrender. So I cannot be part of anything that says, man, we can't do anything about this. Or no. And that's why I'm actually speaking at this point in time. Because I'm hoping that some of the things I say here today will ignite some spark somewhere that will see a groundswell of support and action towards getting some of these things up and running. That's what we'd like to see. The same way that we can see a groundswell for other things, and correctly so too. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I am saying to you that for me this is at the core of the challenges that we are having, not only with youth, but with persons who are finding themselves in situations where they think they can no longer cope. That is my view. And the other aspect of this, I have been pushing for this for a while too. Like I said, I'm from the city, and I represented the city. This question of persons who having been convicted of various crimes, they go and they do the time, and then when they come out, free men, free women, they have this thing holding over their head called a record, a criminal record, that whenever you go to get a police certificate of character is reflected on that record. Persons then are, in many cases, not allowed to get the jobs that they could possibly get. And then they have to wait a period of time, 5 years or whatever, to have that record expunged. In the meantime, 5 years, those persons have children to feed, families to support, themselves to support. And as some people used to say to me, boss, you know you gotta eat. Well, I understood exactly what that meant. I am saying that we need to get away from that. We need to change that. And how do we change that? Now, when a person comes up and they come to get a record expansion, they go to someone, a JP maybe, the MP, whatever, to get a letter written and all of that, and it goes through a whole system. We need to change that. I believe when you go to prison and there are rehabilitation programs at the prison, and perhaps those programs can be enhanced, but the persons at the prison, to my mind, are in the best position over however long you've been incarcerated to make determinations that, look, person A or B has done such and such. We think these persons are ready to be rehabilitated into society and for the world of work. Okay, if a person, let's say, was an alcoholic that caused him to do things that he ended up in prison, you don't want that person to be a bartender. You save them from themselves, right? But it shouldn't stop them from working in another area. So this whole thing of repeat offenders, there's a term for it which I will not think because I don't want to confuse your head. But we have to stop. We have to do everything possible to give persons the opportunity to demonstrate to society that they have learned from the experience and that they're ready to fit back into society and to be given a chance. If we continue to rob persons of the chance to survive and to provide, then we all know what the result is going to be. So all of these things are connected. And I don't think, let me rephrase that. I think that we need to fight harder and to work harder in these areas in order to get Barbados where we want Barbados to be. And that is one of the areas that I feel strongly about it. And all of these things are tied up. So you can have a person coming from a disadvantaged community, low self-esteem, going into a secondary school system, getting the same sort of thing for another 5 years, couldn't do 2 subjects properly, suddenly doing 10 with the same result, then graduate, nothing, can't find a job. Unfortunately, some people get involved in criminal activity, go to prison, spend time, come back out, still can't get the job because they have to wait to get the record expunged. This is a vicious cycle that we need to alter. And those are the things that have been occupying my mind over the last several months while I've been taking life easy, because I was thinking about them, trying to think if there is any way that I personally can help. And this is these things that I'm talking about, we're not speaking about the government, although the government of Barbados, whichever government is in office has a responsibility. But this is things for the country, for the society, for communities, for ordinary people, for religious organizations and institutions, for service clubs. These are the things that people ought to be doing. I remember convening meetings in the city of Bridgetown with religious institutions at the time, because I felt that each religious institution should be able to mentor about 5 underprivileged persons from within the community, not from outside. And not that you're trying to Christianize them or make them Muslims or whatever, but the religious upbringing and training and looking out for the mentorship, standing in the gap for, especially in situations where parents are not fulfilling that role and responsibility. I felt that those organizations could play a significant part in letting that child or those children know that, look, there's somebody here who is interested in me, so that when I have a farm level meeting, you don't, the child is there, parents for other children are turning up, and nobody's coming on your behalf. Those things have a negative impact on the psyche of children and create the kind of social disunity that we are seeing in this country. So those are the things that I had on my heart that I wanted to discuss with you. And I was not here to speak on political issues, as I said, because there are people who are there to do that. But I believe that these things are important and need to get on the agenda and high on the agenda so that we can see a difference, even if not immediately, even if not right now. Certainly in a few years we should see a difference if we make sure that we address these issues. So, without any further ado, just to let you know, I'm still here. I'm still around, still have a very keen interest in my country. I know from the political side that people have not seen me, and you will not see me because I do not intend to come out of retirement. Meaning if you're retired, that's my view, so I ain't getting involved in those things. There are people there now, it's a cycle, part is a relay. I have run my race, I pass on the baton, and they gone. I don't know if there's any questions that anybody may want to pose, but that is my